Hi everyone, happy spring! Today's video is a wrap-up of the middle grade books I read in January and February. This is a combination of books I read to my kids and a couple that I read on my own but that are totally kid-appropriate middle grade age level. These book recommendations would be for kids. These kids could read on their own, anywhere from 8 to 12. But if you wanted to read them aloud, most of them would be really fun, read aloud. So the very first book that I read this month was actually not something I read. I listened to Cinder by Marissa Meyer, and this book was really interesting. So it does say it's written for kids ages 12 and up, and I felt like it was about that age-appropriate age level. This book is a readaptation of Cinderella with a lot of different spins and twists. It was very interesting. Already having known the Cinderella story, I still found it very intriguing, and I was very curious, and I listened to it in about 3 days. I was just like, I wanted to find out what happened. It was really, really interesting. I really can't say a lot that I didn't like about Cinder. I thought it was really well done. Incredible to me that she could take a timeless tale like Cinderella and turn it into something completely new, completely different, and still keep me on my toes and guessing throughout. And my 12-year-old son also listened to it with me, and he really enjoyed it as well. So I would give Cinder a rating of 8 out of 10. It's not something I'm going to read again and again and again like Pride and Prejudice. I could just reread that book countless times. But Cinder is definitely a really interesting story, and I could listen to it again. The next book we read was The Lighthouse Between the Worlds. This book is about a boy named Griffin. His father and him run a lighthouse. They're lighthouse keepers. Come to find out, it's a magical lighthouse with portals to other worlds. And I was a little bit disappointed, I'm not gonna lie, and the reason I was disappointed is because you find out toward the beginning that this book, there's portals to different worlds, and you find out about all these other worlds, but you don't go there until the very end, and it just was like, well, I shouldn't say you don't go there. I'm not going to give all the spoilers away. You don't really get to explore the other worlds in this book. Really. There's a sequel and maybe, I think, yeah, just a sequel. So, I did find it interesting. It's set on the coast of Oregon, which is where I grew up, so in that way it was endearing to me. However, I would probably give it a 5 out of 10. I just wasn't gripped by the story as much as I thought I would be when I read the back cover. I thought it was going to be really good, but we did read it for a book club and we still had fun. The next book we read was Only the Names Remain. As I suspected, this book was definitely not an easy read or a light read. It was very, very sad. It was very eye-opening and good. A really good book. I'm really glad it was incorporated into our sonlight curriculum this year, and I read it out loud to my 12-year-old, and we both learned a lot reading about the Cherokee Trail of Tears. So I'd give this one a 10 out of 10 for, it was fast-paced, it was well written, and it was about an important time in history that I feel like is overlooked a lot of times. So I would definitely give it a 10 out of 10. Again, it's not something I'm going to pick up and read for fun, but it was a good book, and I would definitely recommend reading it. Everyone, read it. Okay, the next one was another audiobook. I like audiobooks because I can listen to them while I cook or clean or whatever, and so I do. And the next one I read was Emily of New Moon, which is by Montgomery, which is the same author as Anne of Green Gables. Anne of Green Gables became super famous, and everybody knows Anne of Green Gables. And I don't quite understand why Emily of New Moon didn't get the same treatment, because I think the Emily of New Moon story is infinitely better. I love Emily of New Moon. I loved her story. If you want to read my review, I gave a review on Goodreads. You can find me at The Happy Homeschooler on Goodreads, and I'm marking a lot of the books that I'm reading as well as the categories for them. So if you're interested, you can go find them there. Emily of New Moon, if you don't know, is about an orphan girl. Her father passes away at the beginning of the book. She goes and lives with some relatives that she has never met, and it's about her experience on the farm. And I think this is really interesting because so many stories, Cinder is a good example, where there's there's so much fantasy, right? And in her story, it's a simple story of a farm girl of a girl on a farm, and there's, they don't have electricity, and it's so interesting to me how they lived back then versus how kids are expected to live now, and the fact that a story that is so simple could be so interesting and so engaging my 12-year-old son again, when I read him about what the book was about, he was like, you know, I don't think that sounds like me. But he sat there listening because it's hilarious. It's so funny, much like Anne of Green Gables, where there's a lot of that Ella Montgomery humor throughout. So I definitely do recommend reading Emily of New Moon. It's a whole series. There's absolutely nothing I disliked about Emily of New Moon. Literally nothing. So it gets a 10 out of 10. If I could give it more, I would. The next book we read was The Year of Miss Agnes, and this was for my kindergarten. It comes in the B core, Sonlight B core curriculum, and this book is so sweet. It's about this wonderful teacher who comes to her students in Alaska, and they've never met anyone like her, who respects them, who treats them with care, who goes above and beyond, and is just kind of like the best teacher you could ever imagine. And I really enjoyed this story. My kids enjoyed this story. They gave me a hard time because I was crying for a decent amount of it. Happy tears. They're just really meaningful, the stories that got told, and I definitely encourage you to read this book. Again, you can go find my review of it on Goodreads, because I did give them a review on Goodreads too. So if you guys need book recommendations, be sure to check out my video up there. I'll post, I have 2 videos. I have a girls book recommendations that are not really school related, and then I have a book recommendations for middle graders that have quite a few, some that came in our school curriculum, and some that are just fiction that we love. And I definitely recommend you check out either one of those videos and see if there's any books that you're missing out on that you should read. The next book I read was Scarlet, which is the sequel to Cinder in the Lunar Chronicles. It's Lunar Chronicles number 2. Similar to Cinder, where it's a retelling. So Scarlet is retelling, and it's like Scarlet and the grandma and the big bad wolf, right? And it was just, again, very fun, like a different version of a story that we all know, we've all grown up hearing, and I really enjoyed it. I will say, if my kids were reading it, there was one spot with PDA, I think there was one kiss in, I think there might have been one kiss in Cinder too, I don't remember now, but if that's something that you don't want your younger kids to read, just be aware I think there was one kiss in that book. Oh yeah, and for Scarlet, I'd give it like an 8 out of 10. Again, like similar to Cinder, I really enjoyed it. It's not something I want to like go back and read again and again and again, but I definitely enjoyed the story. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe to my channel, hit the notification bell so you get notified whenever I make a new video. I make videos every single week about homeschooling and books and curriculum, and I'd love to have you guys see the next one. Okay, next book I have is No Children, No Pets, and this book was so much fun. I actually read it for my kindergartner for his curriculum with Sonlight. However, it's a really good book, and some of the books that I read again and again and again, I get tired of. And this one, I do not get tired of. And in fact, my kids are like, read it again, because it's so much fun. So it's about a single mom with 3 children living in Philadelphia, and they inherit an apartment building, a small apartment building in Palm Beach, Florida. So they go to Palm Beach, Florida, and they start deciding, if they should stay there or not. And obviously the kids are for it, and the mom's not sure because it's a big uproot. So we get to just kind of go on that journey with them. It's a really fun, really funny story, and it kept from my 12-year-old to my 5-year-old very engaged and laughing the whole time. So No Children, No Pets gets a 10 out of 10 too, because it's a really good story and we read it a lot. If you're thinking like, man, she always rates things high, I do tend to have a high rating. I actually noticed this on my Goodreads. They tell you like your average rating, and I tend to, because I'm just kind of like a generous rater, but I really do. It's because when I love something, like a book, I give it a good rating, and so that's why. So this one is A Grain of Rice by Helena Claire Pittman. It's hilarious. My children were in hysterics. They were busting up laughing. It's about a young man, and they're in China, and it's about a young man who wants to marry the princess, and he comes and asks for her hand in marriage, but the emperor kind of laughs him off because he's a commoner and he's poor. So he takes a job in the palace, and you kind of just get to see how he is so smart and clever, and in a funny way. It's not in a bad way, and he wins the heart of the princess, wins the heart of the kingdom, really, and then eventually gets the girl. So this story, we sat down. It was supposed to be a week-long read, and we just sat down and read it in one sitting because the kids were enjoying it so much. So again, this one gets a 10 out of 10, but it is a really good book, and I definitely recommend it as a read aloud if you don't already have it as a read aloud. Just read it to your kids. And last but definitely not least is The Good Master by Kate Seredy. Is a really fun book. It's set in Hungary before World War I, and it's about a girl named Kate and a little boy named Jonksi. They're cousins, and Kate comes to live with Jonksi on their farm. She is from Budapest, so she's from the city. She's got an education, and he doesn't have an education, but he's got an education in farming, and he's got a different sort of education. And it's really fun, like the adventures they go on. It's in Core H with Sonlight. Sorry guys, I'm listing the core so that if you are curious, you can go and check it out. So it's in Core H, and all of my kids are listening to it. So even though it's age group is like 13 to 15, all of my children down to the 5-year-old are enjoying the story because there's so many funny things that happen. So of course, again, it gets a 10 out of 10. I'm sorry, it's a really funny story. It's a really good book, and there's a sequel which I'm really excited to read. I hope you guys enjoyed my wrap up for January and February books. I'll be doing this again for March, maybe March and April. We'll see how many books I get through, and then I can share them with you guys so you don't miss out on any of these amazing reads. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next video.